Said, what do we want? 15. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? 15. And when do we want it? Now. All right. Sounds like you guys are ready to get started. So to welcome everyone here, I first want to bring up Bob Murphy, who's a teacher here at Franklin High School. He's going to welcome us to the school today. Bob?
Hello. My name is Bob Murphy, and up the hill is Franklin High School. I work there as a math teacher. Our school is approximately 1,400 students, and over 900 of them are on this thing called free and reduced lunch. That means that their families don't have much money. Those of us who work with those kids and families see day after day after day Franklin kids and families not struggling to get ahead, but just struggling to survive. A lot of us who work at Franklin, we welcome you, we thank you, we're looking forward to getting signatures, and we're looking forward to getting this thing passed. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Today we've gathered here for an historic event. It's the first 15 Now National Conference, taking place only months after the launch of 15 Now in January of this year. We got a call from a reporter a couple weeks ago in the 15 Now office. We're getting a lot of calls these days, actually. And they were just doing a report, an article. They wanted to just get their facts straight, asking us some questions. And they said, so 15 Now, it's been around for about 2 or 3 years, right? 2 or 3 years. More like 2 or 3 months. But this has been the absolutely incredible and tremendous impact that we've had. That in only a matter of months, the entire political establishment here in Seattle has been forced to accept and discuss, at least in words, the demand for a $15 an hour minimum wage. But it's not just the politicians. There's a mass discussion taking place in Seattle. Not just the politicians, not just the media, but everywhere you go, everywhere here in Seattle. And in fact, I asked the people that are coming from out of town, when you go to a shop this weekend, if you go to a restaurant, talk to the workers, ask them what they think about 15. Everyone will have something to say about 15 because we've started this mass discussion. We've gotten here because we've organized. We've taken action. We've gotten our voice heard. We've built the mass pressure from below. But really, this rests on the courageous actions of the fast food workers who have been willing to risk their jobs and going out on strike over the last years. Our struggle flows from the incredible historic victory that we saw in SeaTac, which passed the $15 an hour minimum wage. And of course, from the incredible and historic victory of electing a socialist to the Seattle City Council. And this is really just part of a much wider struggle which is taking place in the U.S. From the Occupy movement here, but also all around the world. There's a growing desire of ordinary working people to stand up, to fight back against the unimaginable social and economic inequality that we see in our society today. People are ready to stand up proudly and say, we've had enough. Everyone deserves better. We deserve a living wage. Working people deserve a real voice. We deserve a dignified life. Our goal today is to take our fight to the next level, to rally our forces and launch an all-out mobilization around a strategy to win. And we can win. We can win 15 in Seattle and beyond, but it's going to be up to us to organize, to unite, and fight together. And we are ready to fight. So this is the aim of today's conference. This is the aim of today's discussion and debate. And this is the main purpose of the discussion that we're having today around the main resolution that everyone should have in their folders. It's called Onto the Ballot, Into the Streets, the Vision and Strategy Resolution for the First 15 Now National Conference. And the idea of this document, which is brought to this conference by the Seattle Organizing Council, that's representatives from the different action groups that we've set up here in Seattle. The coordinators have come together in the Seattle Organizing Council, discussed and debated this resolution, and we're putting it forward to the conference today as a way to come together and unite around a common strategy to win. And I'm really excited. I think that we're going to have an excellent discussion, and I think there's a really strong basis for us to unite around this resolution and a common strategy to build 15 Now here in Seattle and all across the country. And I thank you all for coming here today. That's great. Anybody from the Midwest, Chicago, Wisconsin, Minneapolis? All right, Minneapolis. Great. We got any folks here from California or Oregon on the West Coast? All right, and anybody else that we missed, let's give everybody a warm welcome. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to bring up Jess Spear to introduce the discussion.
It's really wonderful to be here today with all of you. We're here today to discuss how we can end poverty wages. An end to poverty wages in Seattle would not only lift 100,000 workers and their families out of poverty, but it would send a message to workers and to business that the battle against income inequality has started. To workers, this would be a clarion call, a call to join us in this struggle, to win better living conditions, that we don't have to accept this rotten race to the bottom, where we have to compete against each other for low-wage jobs with our living standards cut year after year. To business, it would send a clear signal that workers are fed up. We've had enough of your poverty wage model. We are worth more, we're going to fight for more, and we challenge you to try and stop us. I think it's worth taking a minute to reflect on what a remarkable thing it is that we're gathered here today with all this momentum on our side to discuss how we're going to raise the minimum wage, not to 10-10, but to 15. There's a lot of talk out there about 10-10 and the proposal from the Democratic Party. No doubt that would be a step forward for many low-wage workers, but let's be honest, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough to make up for the 30 years our wages have been stagnating. We workers have been dealing with the worst economic recovery since the Great Depression. In fact, for the majority of us, there has not been a recovery. Most of us, for most, the recovery has just gone to the 1%. Wall Street is doing just fine. Boeing, Starbucks, and other mega corporations are posting millions in profits. The rest of us are still dealing with home foreclosures, student debt, unemployment, underemployment, and cuts to our social services, on top of the constantly increasing cost of living. And the jobs created since the recession. Nearly 60% are low-wage jobs that offer almost no benefits, no economic stability, and no way to advance. We're told to get educated, work harder. Never mind that low-wage workers are more educated and more productive than at any time in history. So, yeah, we're fed up. We can't take it anymore. Occupy Wall Street was the first expression of this mood. It raised the consciousness that people across the world, a better world is possible if we fight for it. And one of the main obstacles to that better world is the way this economy is organized. The poverty wage model is prevalent in our country now. We can't educate ourselves out of this reality. If we want to secure a better future for ourselves and our children, then we have to fight for our rights for a living wage, benefits, and a union. Right now, we're fighting for 15. The end goal is within sight, though not automatic. But for me, as a socialist, this fight is about winning a bigger prize: worker power. Yeah. Because winning a 62% increase in the minimum wage when business is threatening us with layoffs, cuts to our pensions, and attacks on our unions, it's about asserting our inherent power as workers. We make this city run. Without us, nothing gets done. Winning 15 is not the end, it is the beginning. And that's a big reason why they will fight us with all they have. They dare not let our audacity spread to other cities and states. It's not just a loss in profits that they fear. They don't want us to shift the balance of power in our favor. We have the momentum, we have the will, and the tenacity, but we haven't won anything yet. We have to keep that in mind. We've won public opinion, but we know all too well that corporate cash can sway that opinion in the wrong direction. It happens all the time. A no-brainer issue starts off polling high, but by the time business is done with it, support falls. In our case, there's an important difference we have to recognize. We not only have public opinion on our side, we have a movement in the streets. Since December, we have seen major street protests and rallies every month, community groups forming in every district in Seattle, banner drops, bus speeches, and public testimony. What we have is the active participation of the people. And it's through this active participation and expanding it to include all those who have yet to get involved that we are going to win a real 15 minimum wage for all workers in Seattle and set an example for the rest of the country to follow. Today, we're here to discuss how exactly we can achieve that. The April 26th resolution lays out general principles for our movement, our perspective on the current crisis faced by our brothers and sisters in low-wage jobs. How can we build a movement to change that? A strategy for doing so, and then finally how we should organize ourselves in this movement. I think the first 7 points in that resolution, are generally well understood, and I covered them already, about the political situation we face and our goal and vision for 15 Now. We aim to empower people to challenge the 1%'s domination of our economic and political system. Crucial to our movement is that it's built democratically from the bottom up. From the beginning, we've really focused on building action groups, and now we want to discuss the democratic rights of everyone involved in this movement. The resolution concretizes what has been over the past months just taking shape. We organize locally in our action groups, which are independently organized as they see fit, as long as they adhere to the general principles outlined at the beginning of the document. Action groups can coordinate at the city level in organizing councils. As Jesse mentioned earlier, here in Seattle, the organizing council has been meeting since before the March 15th march to discuss the concerns raised in the public on the issue of small businesses and to decide on a strategy to deal with it in a manner consistent with our goal in building a grassroots movement. Today, we are proposing a democratic structure for coordinating this movement nationally. The 15 Now Steering Committee would coordinate actions, make decisions on policy, and speak for 15 Now in between national conferences. We are proposing a steering committee that is comprised of 7 activists in Seattle and 6 from each section in the country. We feel this reflects 15 Now's current strength and priorities. What we will decide here today is on that structure. The actual election of the activists to these positions will take place in their regions following the conference. We think the activists from each region will best know what person or persons can fulfill the role. The 15 Now Steering Committee will elect a board of directors that will deal with the financial and legal questions and is directly accountable to the steering committee, which has the authority to overturn any decision should they see fit. These structures will allow us to move forward, seize the amazing opportunity in front of us, and keep building our movement. But what we're here today to really discuss, I think, is the strategy. How are we going to win knowing what we're up against, knowing big business is really going to pull out everything they have? And I think, what's outlined in the resolution isn't a shocker to anybody sitting in the audience. It's what we've been talking about since this whole thing got started. We need to build a grassroots movement of thousands of people active in building the support for 15, answering questions, and signing more people up to get involved. We've got to ensure our demands are ringing loud and clear. We will still continue attending big public events to demonstrate the strength of our forces in the coming months. Next Thursday is May Day, International Workers' Day. And over the past decade or so, this has included a major mobilization of our immigrant brothers and sisters who are justly demanding immigration reform so that they no longer need to live in fear of deportation and can gain dignity on the job. We stand in solidarity with all those who struggle for their rights and call for not one more deportation. Two weeks later, on May 15th, we will participate in the international protests around low-wage workers. But the main organizing tool we're putting forward at this conference is a signature gathering campaign for the charter amendment filed by 15 Now activist Sarah White. Sarah's going to speak on this later today, but I want to highlight an important point in the document. Seattle has the most advanced struggle for 15 in the country, and it is here that we must focus our energy for the time being. Today, we're going to hear from activists all across the country that are building 15 Now in their cities. They will speak to the echo that they're getting from the people in those cities, ready to stand up and fight back. A win here in Seattle will increase the potential for success in those cities. Let's not forget the victory in SeaTac and the election of Kshama Sawant, what that did for the fight for 15 in Seattle. I know there has been a lot of discussion among activists about the language put forward in the ballot measure. We take into account the real concerns of small businesses and nonprofits while making it clear that big business must pay now. Compare that to the mayor's proposal leaked to the stranger just yesterday. What they put forward is big business, McDonald's, Starbucks, QFC, Macy's, and more. They get a 3 to 4 year phase-in, even though they're making record profits, yeah. Small businesses, defined as less than 500 employees, get 4 to 7 years. 7 years. Is this a joke? I mean, every year workers have to wait for a relief is another year they have to struggle to get by. This is not a serious proposal. There's also tip credit and healthcare deductions included, opening the door to more wage theft. Finally, what is being proposed from the mayor's advisory committee is that only after we get to 15, after those ridiculously long phase-in, will we get a cost of living adjustment. Meaning we will never see 15 in today's dollars. We have to call this what it is, a fake 15. But okay, The Mayor's Advisory Committee is done. Now the real debate begins in the City Council, where the decision on whether we get a real 15 this year will take place. Business has finally stepped in the form of 1% Seattle, an AstroTurf group like the Tea Party, funded and directed by big business, but with a small business face. That they've stepped in with all their resources to lie and confuse the public underlines the urgent need to build this movement. As the resolution says, the most dangerous thing we could do at this point is to be passive. We cannot rely simply on negotiating on the Mayor's Advisory Committee, which has big business sitting there on it, or the City Council, which is heavily influenced by business. We need to keep building from below and keep up the pressure on the City Council. They will be under tremendous pressure to further water down that fake 15 proposal. To keep up the momentum, to ensure the City Council feels pressure to deliver a real 15 from May to June, we had to file the ballot measure in April before the Mayor's Committee was done. We had to begin building that safety net. We appealed to labor, both their leaders and their rank and file, to join us in this effort. However, just gathering the signatures alone or saying that we're going to do that is not enough. To actually pressure the City Council, the threat of a ballot measure has to be credible, which means the measure must be perceived as winnable. This is why we deal specifically with the questions and concerns around small businesses and nonprofits. That we say big business, including franchises, goes directly to 15, but small and medium-sized businesses with less than 250 employees and all nonprofits will receive the protection of a 3-year phase-in. Also included in the resolution is something that we've come up with after discussion with hotel workers and their union about how they can defend their quality health care plan, which they fought and won. The Seattle Organizing Council proposes to collect signatures for the charter amendment that includes the following. Hotel and conference center workers can agree through their collective bargaining process with their union and with their approval to an opt-out if their health care plan of at least $700 per month, annually adjusted for inflation, is guaranteed in their contract for all workers, including part-time workers and their whole families. I know that we will be discussing and debating that today, so I'm motivating it here, and people are welcome to motivate their opposition from the floor. After we collect the signatures for the charter amendment that we decide to move forward with today, as the document lays out, we reserve the right to come together in June and decide whether to turn those signatures in and trigger a vote in November. We will need to take stock of the debate that's taking place in the City Council, whether they're likely to side with workers or against them, and also what is the strength of our movement. So I want to end with an appeal to every one of you here, everyone sitting in the audience. Reach out to everyone you know and urge them to get active. Urge them to help collect signatures for the ballot measure and ensure workers get a real 15. Let them know that this isn't just about lifting up 100,000 workers and their families out of poverty. It's about dignity. It's about racial and gender equality. It's about finally standing up to the corporate domination of our lives and saying enough. Let's unite together and win 15.
Hi everyone, my name is Toya. I'm a 15 Now organizer in Boston, and I've been in Seattle for the past month working on the campaign here. It's been an amazing experience, but I just wanted to give you guys a little idea of what's happening in Massachusetts with 15 Now. The movement isn't quite as far as it is here, but we are planning to do a non-binding referendum. What that means is people will vote on 15, but it's just for, it's not going to be put into law. It's just to get the word out there so people know what we're doing and to make the leadership of our state aware that this is something that we want, we're going to fight for it. Deval Patrick is our governor, and he's in agreement with Obama saying 10-10 over 2 years with no cost of living increase. And as we all know, The landlords will not wait for the rent, not 2 years. There are other groups in Massachusetts, raise the wage and things like this. They're trying to raise the wage to $9.75, which would be an improvement for us. But imagine here in Seattle if you were fighting to raise the wage 40 cents. It's ridiculous. So something that I've learned here that I'm really excited to take back to Massachusetts is this thing that Jess mentioned as tip credit. I call it a tip penalty because it's not a credit. The federal minimum, thanks. The federal minimum wage, some of you may not know, is $2.13 an hour for servers. Here in Seattle, one of the 7 states where they don't have the tip penalty, servers make $9.32? $9.32, just like someone who works at McDonald's. Being someone who worked in a restaurant for 7 years and a woman, I know how degrading it is to bat my eyes and have men grab at me for a refill. And there's nothing I can do, because if I tell him to go, and tell my manager to get him out, I'm not gonna get my tip. My boss isn't gonna pay me any money. I'm still gonna make $2.63, because Massachusetts like to think of themselves as progressive instead of $2.13. So Seattle, please do not let big business force you to take a step backwards with a tip penalty. Don't let them say that $9.32 is enough for servers, because the minimum is gonna be $15. That's not a lot of money, it's the new minimum. And so the 43 other states that are here that don't have this luxury of making a minimum wage in the tip service, let's move forward. Let's fight with servers. Let's show our solidarity. They are low-wage workers too, and they deserve a living wage. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for inviting me out here. I just want to talk about the work we're doing in Minneapolis, Minnesota with 15 Now. So Minneapolis was recently cited as having one of the worst racial equity gaps in the country. That means that we have one of the widest divides between communities of color and the white population in Minneapolis. And so this is it's a big issue that a lot of people are talking about around the city. And we've been able to move with 15 Now to be part of that conversation on how do we address this gap. We had our launch rally on March 15th while y'all were doing the march in Seattle. And we had over 100 people show up to our launch event, which was excellent. And it was, thank you. We wanted to create an environment that's open to low-wage workers to come in and participate. We had translation, childcare offered. We had breakout groups where workers got together with community organizers and talked about how to move the work forward in Minneapolis. And recently in Minnesota, some of you might know, we had a legislation passed on the state level for $9.50. So if y'all think the phase-in is bad here, we're doing $9.50 over 3 years in Minnesota, right? But that's allowed us to be part of that discussion, and our starting point is different. We don't start from what the Democratic Party thinks is politically viable. We start from what's necessary to live a decent standard of living, and that's 15's the minimum. Okay. I can slow down a little bit, actually, that's nice. We were approached by a group of low-wage workers at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, and they're in an organizing drive. I don't have much time. They're in an organizing drive with the machinists right now. And workers if you've ever been to Minnesota, you know what it's like there. Working at the airport is worse. We design whole cities so you can stay inside most of the day, and these folks are out there working overnights on the runway in the middle of the Minnesota winter. And so we're gonna move forward in Minneapolis with an initiative at the airport to try to win a living wage for all workers there, and then hopefully bring it to the city as soon as we can. So that's what we're up to there, and we look to all you all for support, and make sure you win so we can move this out east from here. Thanks.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'll try to be as good as Toya, but she kind of took my shine. But anyways, so this is gonna be made easier. The video, pretty much outlined what's going on in New York City, but I'm just gonna get into a couple of details. So, St. Patrick's for All launch was our launch. It was a parade, and we had Mayor de Blasio along with many of the progressive elected officials. We were sure to have a presence. There was about 50 of us there, so. We've had launch meetings, both Brooklyn and Queens. I've had follow-up meetings. Currently, the main task is preparing for May Day. We're trying to prepare emerging contingent. New York City is a little bit different in terms of the minimum wage discussion. The New York City does not have the power to actually change the minimum wage. So what we have, along with the actions, we've been involved in signature gatherings, and we plan to collect enough signatures to present to City Council and really let them know that 15 is going to be the starting point of this conversation, the minimum wage. So de Blasio has come out publicly. He said he wants to raise the minimum wage. He has yet to give a number. So we've been nice enough to give him a number, right? Feeding off Seattle, the West Coast, and everything that's going on over here, Mayor de Blasio, he got elected on this tale of two cities, right? This is not just a tale of two cities in New York City. This is a tale of all cities, East Coast, West Coast, and there's an international crisis that 15 Now is bringing this discussion in the crosshairs of the establishment. And, this is an ongoing discussion to a bigger struggle, to a worker struggle. And with that being said, we need to make some history. Thank you.
First, Rob Brook from Oakland.
Hi, I'm a construction worker from Oakland, California. My local endorsed 15 Now and donated $500. The Bay Area economy is booming, but for low-paid workers, these recoveries are have less and less of a positive effect. They just mean out-of-control rents, and they mean an empty gas tank and a gridlocked freeway. 15 Now arrived in Oakland after the union-led Lift Up Oakland had begun a drive to get 1225 on the November ballot. So far, 17,000 signatures have been collected for that. We've been piggybacking on that campaign, and the general sentiment is we want to be able to afford to stay in Oakland. That's nationwide, I think. Bay Area Democrats are trying to talking the talk about the minimum wage, trying to keep the movement safe, contained, and as cheap as possible for big business. In San Francisco, the Bay Area's most gentrified city, the Central Labor Council passed a motion for 15. The Service Employees Union announced a petition campaign for 15, which has not yet started, which may turn out to be a negotiating chip with the city. We don't know. No one seems to really know. The union should be plowing money into this and resources into the fight for 15. But the problem with the union-led campaigns, and we've experienced this in Oakland, is they tend to be very top-down, where campaigners are asked to march up to the top of the hill and then march back down again. And unlike 15 Now, there are no plans to initiate neighborhood action groups. And this might seem like a secondary issue, but it's a critical issue, because through these groups, working-class people can establish an activist infrastructure in our working-class neighborhoods, which will serve our needs beyond 15. The only real, genuine grassroots campaign for 15 is in Davis, California, where Raise the Wage Davis, our friends there, are fighting for 15. You can hear more about that at our plug, the workshop in California. Your victory in Seattle will be a victory for those that big business plan on excluding from all future prosperity, the 99%. But it will also be a victory for those communities that have always been excluded from prosperity in this country, the richest country in the history of the world.
I'm really, really excited to be here. I've been following this struggle from afar since before it began. I also ran for city council in Minneapolis, like Shama Sawant. And we put 15 also as one of our main campaign slogans, which got excellent support in working class communities. We weren't able to win, but we're still trying to translate that same energy into building 15 Now in Minneapolis. What I think 15 Now is trying to do across the country is something very basic, but also something quite unique. We're attempting to fill a really huge political vacuum, at least partially fill, that exists across the country. You know, on the one hand, I think Occupy showed this, a lot of things it shows us. There's a huge anger at the deepening economic and racial inequalities, the growing ocean of poverty that exists in this country on the one hand, while the super rich, the 1%, see their profits rise every year, see their ability to dominate our economic and political system rise. So there's this anger out there, but on the other hand, for most working people looking to fight back, what do? How do they get involved? What's the organizational vehicle that they can join up with in their neighborhoods and their workplace and their communities to fight back? It doesn't really exist. I think that was one of the secrets that Occupy Wall Street showed. It was simple. You just go down to the plaza, you say, we've had enough, and everybody comes together who agrees with you. And that was an extremely attractive idea. Unfortunately, it didn't have the strategy and tactics to move forward. But what Occupy Wall Street, what 15 Now is trying to do is to say anybody who thinks that we should fight for a $15 an hour minimum wage, who thinks working people deserve a basic minimum that they can get by and pay the bills, anybody who agrees with the idea that we need to build a mass grassroots bottom-up movement can join this. We're trying to build a bottom-up democratic movement that unfortunately is not very common in this day and age in this country. As Rob was pointing out, many of the excellent union initiatives unfortunately don't offer those same kind of structures. So I think what we're doing is absolutely important, but it's also basic and it's also unique in this country. And I think that's what offers the potential, especially the victory in Seattle, for this movement to really blow up and develop as a mass struggle across the country. Thank you.
Sisters and brothers, my name's Carl Bellin. I am a member of Ironworkers Local 527 and a 15 Now organizer in Pittsburgh. I'm here today to talk about some of the things that are going on back home in what was once one of the great bastions of the working class in this country, my city, Pittsburgh, and where, again, today, workers are starting to stand up. For example, at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, where the non-medical workers, the janitorial workers, are fighting for a $15 an hour minimum wage and a union. And where the Democrats continually have moved against the unions that are fighting for a $15 an hour minimum wage and continue to do so at every step. One of those unions, a very important one, and I know you have quite a strong local out here as well, is the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU. Let's hear it for the ATU. In Pittsburgh, the ATU has been under continual attack since at least 2007, where transit has been cut, and they haven't quite gone after wages yet, but they have gone after the union in other ways, around the back door, trying to take away health care and things like this. ATU Local 85 in Pittsburgh was one of the first ATU locals, actually one of the first unions out west, or out east, sorry, we're out west now, right? One of the first unions out east to endorse 15 Now. Through Local 85, which is a very militant and very strong local out in Pittsburgh, we've also been able to get the endorsement of the ATU International, which represents 190,000 transit workers in North America. We have the momentum. We are moving forward. The combined power of the working class across this country will win $15 an hour, and it will win $15 an hour now.
Roger Hawkins from New York City.
Brothers and sisters, I am so happy to be here with you. And this is the year, the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty and the programs of Head Start and food stamps and Medicaid and Medicare. But over the past 50 years, there's been a bipartisan attack by the Democrats and Republicans to shred all those programs. And let's talk about capitalism's most underdeveloped sector of the working class, people of color, who would benefit from a 15 now minimum wage. Don't you know that Black and Asians and Hispanics make up 42% of minimum wage earners in 2013, despite the fact that they make up only 32% of the workforce? Don't you know that 40% of Black workers and youth are in low-wage jobs? Don't you know that 1 in 4 Blacks and 1 out of 6 Latinos under the age of 25 will be without work? And what is not talked about too often in the press is the reservations of this nation. In Pine Ridge, the unemployment rate is at 80%, while the per capita income fluctuates between $4,000 and $6,000. Let me tell you something, capitalism sucks. And you have the Black CEO of Wall Street and Empire, Barack Obama, coming out with 1010 in 2016. He has this sorry-ass My Brother's Keeper initiative, which is asking big business to help out young Black folks when they've caused this crisis in the first place. I'm big on anniversaries, and the best anniversary that I can cite for you right now is 50 years since Freedom Summer in Mississippi. Let's make Seattle the new Freedom Summer of 2014.
New York City. Now, Doreen McGrath from Seattle, District 2.
Thank you. That was great. I would like to get some buttons now that say, capitalism sucks. And I would like to, my name is Doreen McGrath. I am with the Freedom Socialist Party, a socialist feminist party that was started here in Seattle over 40 years ago. And we are very proud socialists, and we're very happy this event is happening here today. I would like to motivate an amendment to the resolution. So if you'll take out your resolutions and go to point 14. So my motion is that we amend point 14 to remove where it says big corporations and instead insert all businesses and nonprofits, that we add a point of no collecting bargaining opt-out and replace E with that phrase, remove section C and E and add section F. Fight to help small businesses and nonprofits by a head tax on big business and utility credits.
That's where you find the money.
That's where you'll find the money. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to motivate this with because I see real problems with the two-tiering phase-in and the collective bargaining opt-out. The two-tier phase-in has, it affects 70% of the Seattle workforce. It's too low to start with, and it takes too long even in what is proposed in this initiative. And that 70% who are left out are women and people of color. So like the last speaker said, we can't be doing the same things that we are out here fighting. We are leaving the wrong people behind. And we should leave no one behind. And then the collective bargaining opt-out is just going to destroy the labor movement, and we can't be a part of that either.
Ayers from Seattle.
I think everybody here would love to win a resounding victory on $15 an hour. We would love to see every worker throughout the U.S. Lifted out of poverty. And we'd love to get the strongest victory possible. And that means we have to build a mass movement. We have to unite thousands and thousands of people throughout Seattle, especially right now, to support us and to help and to fight with us. And that means, and it really means that we cannot do it on our own. We have to reach out to other organizations. We need to get other working class people on board. And I think it's especially important that we need the unions on board. We have been, a big part of our strategy since the beginning has been trying to work with the unions. Big business has enormous resources. They have the mass media, they have politicians in their back pocket. We need to build up our own strength, and the unions are very important to that. And I think the CBO is an inseparable part of that strategy of trying to win over the unions. The Unite HERE approached us and they asked us for this. Hotel workers asked us for this. For them, the CBO is their healthcare. And I can understand this. They fought and they won a really good healthcare package. Right now, I believe their wage is about $10 an hour. The main benefit they have over non-union hotels is their healthcare package, which is about $7 an hour. It covers part-time workers, it covers their families. They asked us to help them defend this with the CBO. I used to work at UPS. UPS workers get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They lift heavy packages. It's very dangerous. There's a lot of injuries. They work for $9.50, $10 an hour, and some of them have been doing it for years. And that's because we, UPS workers, also fought and won an extremely good healthcare package. When I worked at UPS, I got 3 free pairs of glasses a year. You can't get that with Obamacare. You can't get that with most healthcare packages. So I think we really need to support these healthcare workers and support what they're asking.
Steve Lee from Seattle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Lee. I'm a member of the International Socialist Organization. I'm also in the action group in the central area, and I've been active in this campaign, and I think it's very encouraging to see everybody from all over the country here today. I want to speak to the collective bargaining opt-out. I think that this is something that is going to weaken our movement rather than strengthen it, and I think that we should take it out. We should amend it. I just want to give you a few reasons why. We have argued about the whole concept of total compensation, the idea that the employers should be able to include their health care, et cetera, benefits into wages. We've all said, benefits are not wages. You can't pay the rent with the benefits. We have to maintain that argument. If instead we use this collective bargaining opt-out, we're weakening that argument. Other people will say, well, you said it about this, but not that. It's inconsistent. It's going to weaken the movement. It's also going to, I think, undercut the ability of people who are not going to gain from this from getting involved in it, because the people who are already covered by a union contract are not going to get anything out of this movement. I think it's going to weaken that. There are other things as well. It will lengthen the time it takes to file, because my understanding is the filing did not include this amendment, and now it will have to be refiled, so it will take another week away. It will weaken unions, I believe, because unions are going to go to members. They want to organize and say, come along, join the union. You get less wages than you would otherwise. How is that going to help the unions? And we can best help the workers and unite here by building a strong movement that wins and takes it on, and then we can, with that strength, we can aid them, we can come to their aid. There's no way that this law is going to be a substitute for strong unions and strong collective bargaining, and that's what the union movement needs.
I'm a preschool teacher. I've been a preschool teacher for going on 28, 29 years. I started making $4 an hour. I don't know if anybody knows about the Worthy Wages movement, but we did some very innovative things in the early 90s. On May 1st, about 50 preschools closed their doors, went on strike. Basically wildcat strikes. I mean, I'm a wobbly, so I've got to, go along with all that. Now there's this talk about universal preschool. And I am making, my wages, I make $17 an hour. And I've been in this profession for 28 years. So that's pretty sad if you ask me. So my question and my shout out to all of you is that we're finally realizing how important early childhood education is. And I'm just hoping that all of you will be on the side of early childhood educators. I think that all of us, we deserve a livable wage, and I would like to stay in this profession. I would like to retire. But I'm going to fight like hell for anyone who's in my profession to make a livable wage, and I hope that you have our backs, because this issue about early childhood is incredibly important for our children, and socialized countries, they know how important our work is. So I didn't know I was speaking. I don't even know if I make sense, but all I'm saying is we got to fight like hell. We've got to educate, organize, agitate, and every worker deserves a goddamn livable wage. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
And then Shepherd Jones, would you come up, please? And next after him would be Bruce Leslie.
Okay, my name is Doug Nielsen, and I signed up to speak just in case I got inspired. Unfortunately, my turn came before the inspiration hit, but I'll go ahead anyway. I just want to say about the opt-out. I'm not totally convinced that we need to do this opt-out, but for Unite Here. But I can imagine an argument that would convince me, and that would be like if we had some grassroots workers in here, and they really believe. I mean, because. Well, like where I work, we've had some issues, and sometimes a bunch of workers get into a workplace and they get something that they really want because of their situation in life, right? And so I can imagine that Unite Here hotel workers, a lot of them, because of their family situation or whatever, they really wanted to get that job at that hotel because their family needed these health benefits. And so if they are really convinced that that they don't have the strength to stand up against their employer, if the wage goes up and hang on to those wages, and they were convinced of that, even though we might think, well, but we'll support you, we'll back you, we'll come out and fight for you to get this, for you, you will be able to maintain it if we stand behind you. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but I'm riding the fence on this one, I guess is what I'm saying. So.
Jones from Seattle.
I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to be one of the legislative aides for Kshama Sawant. I'm here today on personal capacity because this is a ballot initiative and city resources can't be used for that. So I'm also here as an organizer with Socialist Alternative. And I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a feel for what the sorts of games businesses are playing behind the scenes, what it is they're trying to get away with. And when we first started 15 Now, and it was so clear, there was so much support for a $15 an hour minimum wage. All the businesses, they came out and they said, and particularly big business, they came out and said, we think this is a great idea. We just have to do it smart. Because, they knew that they'd get pushback if they said it was a bad idea. And behind the scenes, some of the smart things they wanted to do, they were asking for a 21-year phase-in. Inflation at its current rate would get the Washington state minimum wage to 15 in 18 years, but they wanted 21. And on top of that, They wanted training wages, where for 6 months they could pay somebody way less than the state minimum wage, and then, of course, fire them and hire somebody new. They wanted to add in tip credit to make us lose that. They wanted to add in total compensation so that they could subtract what they're either right now paying in healthcare or what they might have to pay in healthcare in the future. And they might even want to pull some little tricks where they offer healthcare and subtract that even though it's not being used. It's not clear. And these are some of the things that they were trying to get away with, and they were feeling real confident because, in all honesty, a month ago, it really looked in Seattle to most people like $15 an hour, that was just going to happen. You didn't have to get involved. It was just going to happen. The mayor was taking care of it. There was these committees. It was going to happen. And they were taking advantage of that. And then 15 now put that charter amendment on the ballot. And suddenly business is talking about 7 years. Like, they saw a credible threat. They saw a ballot initiative that looked pretty smart, looked like it could win. It looked like it was undercutting all their arguments about small businesses and nonprofits. It looked like there wasn't much they could do. So then they started putting forward, and I'm going to have to stop now, the ridiculous trigonometry that you saw from the mayor's proposal, where there's 4 different tracks, depending on if you're a big business offering health care, if you're a big business not offering health care, if you're a small business with tip credit and health care, if you're a small business without tip credit and health care, all these different paces phase in at some later point down, then the tip credit and the total compensation would phase out, and then there's the inflation doesn't start getting factored in until later down the road, and somehow you are supposed to look at your pay stub and know whether or not your employer is stealing your wages. And they know how difficult that is. This is their plan to steal your wages. And when our movement dies down because we think we've won something, they're going to come back and say those phase-ins need to be permanent. We're not going to phase them out. This inflation is coming in too soon. They're going to come back and take back everything we win if we let this go forward. Now, I got to stop. I'm out of time. Thank you, everybody.
So, Bruce Lesnick.
I just want to propose a slight change in emphasis. I don't think it really contradicts anything that most people have said or would say, but I think it's important. In Jess Spear's opening remarks, she said that to influence the city council, we have to have a strong, credible movement for this charter amendment. I think that framework is a little bit off. I don't think we should be thinking of influencing the city council. I think we should be building the movement independent of the city council. If you're going to run a race and you're constantly looking over your shoulder, you're not going to run your best race. We need to build the movement. We need to put the charter amendment, gather the signatures, build the movement to guarantee that it passes. And then, if the city council wants to come to us and offer a truce, that's fine. But we don't depend on them. We don't look over our shoulder. We don't constantly say, do you give up yet? We build the fight, we move forward. I think that's an important distinction. We only have one representative on the city council at this point. Maybe someday that will change, but until that does, I think we build the movement, we go forward, and whatever they do, they do. The 1963 March on Washington, Martin Luther King, one of the demands was for a $2 an hour minimum wage. Adjusted for inflation today, that would be over $15 an hour. It's a very, very simple point. Everybody can understand that. There should be no debate on that. On the question of health care, I agree with the comments that were made on the hotel workers amendment. I think it's an exception. I think it's a bad idea. I think for all unions, for all small businesses, for all of those who are complaining that there has to be a trade-off between health care that we're giving workers and wages, we should point out that if we had single-payer national health care in the United States, this would not be an issue. That movement needs to be built. Those forces need to join that movement and eliminate that as an issue that gets in the way of fighting for a living wage.
Calvin Priest from Seattle.
I think it's fantastic that we're having this debate here today. I think this event is going to send shockwaves to the establishment around the country that 15 Now is moving forward to fight for 15 on a charter amendment to put maximum pressure on the City Council to make this happen in Seattle and set a model for the rest of the country to follow of what can be won with a real mass movement. But I want to speak to the amendment brought earlier by our brothers and sisters in the FSP to remove the phase-in from the resolution. I think that the reality is that this is a battle, and we have the ability to win this battle, and to win it will mean building our forces, building the strongest possible force on the ground, gathering signatures, and educating people in Seattle of why we need a real 15 and not the 15 that's being proposed, that's being discussed, or has been discussed in this Mayor's Advisory Committee, and that's about to be discussed on the City Council. But the problem with eliminating the phase-in is that the biggest attack, the biggest point of attack that business has right now and will have throughout this fight will be on small business. They know, big business knows that there's no sympathy for their corporate executives who make tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and so what they have to do is they have to make small business the face of their movement. The phase-in is a tactical decision. It's both a tactical decision recognizing this focus on small business, and it's also recognizing the legitimate concerns of small businesses and recognizing the needs of nonprofits. If we don't recognize those needs, if we don't recognize those concerns, we're just handing a gift, we're handing ammunition to big business. And you can see it's been since March 15th, it's been over a month since Chema made her proposal at the March 15th rally. And at that rally, she proposed a phase-in of 3 years for small business and nonprofits. The corporate media has overwhelmingly been ignoring that proposal. The reason they've been ignoring that proposal is because they know that it undermines their argument that 15 Now is dogmatic and it's not concerned about the needs of small business or nonprofits. It's absolutely essential we address those concerns. If we don't, then this charter amendment would not, in fact, be a real threat. It would not be a real threat to the City Council. It would not be a real threat to big business. We would be handing them the ground that they need to defeat 15 in Seattle. In terms of the need for taxing big business to support small businesses and nonprofits instead, the FSP talked about a head tax. We absolutely support that, but it can't be done, unfortunately, through a charter amendment or ballot initiative. It has to be done through the City Council, and we will fight there hard to try to win subsidies for nonprofits and small businesses and much more to fully fund social services and human services in Seattle. But we need to win 15 now, and we need to win it with a proposal that is a real threat to the establishment and has a real potential to win 15.
Very honored here at the 15 Now National Conference to have David K. Johnston come up and speak. David is an investigative journalist and author. He won the 2001 Pulitzer Prize for beat reporting and is the best-selling author of Free Lunch, Perfectly Legal, and The Fine Print. And he's on a book tour around the country to discuss a new book, Divided: The Perils of Our Growing Inequality.
So I got a couple of questions for you. Do you want to win? Are you willing to work? If you're willing to work, get out your pen. Get out your pens. I'm going to give you some numbers that will help you. And I want you to keep in mind that I live in Rochester, New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, mother of 8, and Susan B. Anthony took their whole lives to get the vote back for women. Frederick Douglass fought his whole life to deal with the abolition movement and then with trying to reduce racism in this country. You are not going to win overnight. But you can win if you think about the things that both Gandhi and Martin Luther King recognized, which is you need to win people's hearts over because there's something in the human spirit that doesn't stand for mistreatment and inequality. You're not going to get that except by appealing to people's conscience. And I'm going to give you some numbers and things that will help you do exactly that. Okay? In this country, 1/3 of workers in America make less than $15,000 a year. That's 51 million people make less than $15,000. A lot of them are part-time, but their average earned income is $6,000. The median wage, half make more, half make less, has been stuck since 1998 at a little over $500 a week. At the same time, at the top, incomes keep growing. If you make $500 a week, you're single and have no kids, you will pay the federal government all the money you earn every Monday and a little bit of Tuesday morning, about 40 minutes. But if you make $1 million a day, and we got people in America who make more than that, if you make $1 million a day, you will pay about the first 6 hours of your work on Monday to the federal government. Think about that. $1 million a day person bears a much lighter burden from the federal government than people who make $500 a week. The average income of the 90%, and this is crucial to winning, the 90%. You've got to think about the 90%. The average income of the 90% of Americans on tax returns are now back to below the level of 1966. I was in high school in 1966. The rich, another story. Well, so let me go back to 2011. From 1966 to 2011, that's 45 years. That's more than a career of working, a lifetime of working. The average income of the bottom 90% of Americans, adjusted for inflation, went up $59, less than $5 a month. Now think about that as 1 inch. And I'm going to give you a very powerful symbol to present to people. 1 inch. 90% of Americans on a graph get 1 inch. So how'd the 1% do? How'd the 1% do? They started about 360,000, and I'm going to show you why focusing on the 1% is a mistake. All right? They started about $360,000, $1,000 a day. Well, their bar to this 1 inch is going to come up, it's going to go above my head, it's going to go through the ceiling here, it's going to go 160-some feet. But within that, there's two other groups. There's the 1/10 of 1% and the 1% of the 1%. So let's look at the 1/10 of 1%, 1 in 1,000 Americans. That 1 in 1,000 Americans, they make almost as much money as the bottom half. 50% of Americans, 1 in 1,000, same total income. Their line up here, it's over 880 feet. How about the 1% of the 1%? Mitt Romney is at the bottom of that crowd. It's 16,000 households. It's 31,000 people. It's a neighborhood, a large neighborhood in Seattle. Their line, 5 miles. 1 inch to 5 miles. And you start telling people 90% of Americans over 45 years, their income went up by effectively 1 inch, and the people at the top went up 5 miles, and they can grasp what's happening. And by the way, these people's total federal taxes, payroll and income, they went up a little bit over those years. This group, 60% decline in the amount of taxes they pay as a share of their income. That's the kind of number you need to get to people to understand this. And the 1% at the threshold, that's not the group you need to worry about. It's the oligarchs. It's the 1% of the 1%. And then you know what you need to worry about? All the people who don't have to report their incomes. If you have $1 billion, you just borrow against your $1 billion, you pay 2% a year to the bank, you don't pay 15 or 20% even in taxes, and you live tax-free or virtually tax-free. We shouldn't be allowing that, but we do. You need to educate the people around you about the central role of unions, because when 37% of American workers, more than a third, belong to a union, 80% of workers benefited. And the decline of unions and the decline of pay for the bottom 90% track just perfectly. And the way to sell that to people is, if you believe in unions, If you believe in market economics, then you believe in unions, because that's balance and power, and that's what markets are supposed to have. And if people say they're against unions, then say, oh, so you're against market economics. And start asking them, do you really think some 18-year-old freshly minted high school student or a 23-year-old freshly minted kindergarten teacher, or as they call them in Wisconsin, thugs, has any information to bargain against a multi-billion-dollar government or a corporation for their pay? They don't know anything. You believe in unions, then you believe in market economics. And let me tell you what the founders said about this. The founders of our country believed that the biggest threat we would ever face wasn't a foreign enemy. It wasn't this idea you'll get from the right that we were all going to turn lazy and become druggies or something like that. It was inequality. They wrote about it. It's in all their writings. You can read my piece in Newsweek about it that ran a few weeks ago. John Adams, the second president of the United States, said that his greatest fear was that America would develop a business aristocracy, and that people who only worked for wages, they didn't own their farm or they didn't own their tools, they only worked for wages, would be persuaded to vote for that which is in the interests of this business aristocracy, and it would destroy our democracy and our liberties. Inequality destroys. Inequality costs us enormous amounts of money. But the only way you're going to win is to get people to see that. And if you're going to do that, you have to do the work. You need to read about things. I mean, I hope you read Divided. There are 44 contributors to it, from President Obama and Elizabeth Warren to epidemiologists and others who will explain to you the things you need to know to tell other people why inequality matters. And I'm going to leave you with one other number, a literally killer number, because inequality kills. Today, 47 babies will die in America because of inequality. That is the difference between our infant mortality rate and that of Sweden and Norway. And Japan is almost the same. It would be 45 or 46. In fact, if we just had the infant mortality rate of Cuba, 15 American babies would not die today. Find arguments like this to appeal to people. Get them to understand that there is a price to inequality. Part of that price is people die today. Part of that price is crappy roads, poor education. Part of that price is lots of people not enjoying the freedom to be in this country and to develop the human spirit. And if you do that, and then you get out and get people to vote, you got 90% of the votes. You cannot lose if you do the work. So if you lose, it's your fault.